Excellent. So everybody, Shavua Tov, welcome again, and we're now up to chapter 8 in the book of Judges. I just want to recap. Thank you, everybody, for your patience, for your understanding last week. That unfortunately I had to be, of course, at the funeral in Toronto. So thank you, everybody. But I missed you all, and I'm glad that we're back again. And I want to share the following with everybody. If I can.
Eat this if you hold.
It's a course.
Hold on 1 second. Here we go. Oh, why is it not doing this? There we go. Let's see now. If it'll allow me to do this now. Oh, Cindy's here as well. And in the meantime, let's see what it will allow me to share. Still not doing it. Okay.
This meeting.
No, it's not. It's ready. There we go. Hi, Cindy. And here we go. Hi, everybody. Does everybody see it?
Mm-hmm.
Let me again. How do we make it larger again?
Hold the control button and
Is it
move
control?
the wheel on the mouse.
There we go.
You can make it bigger, so.
How's that? Does everybody see that? Is that
Yeah.
Much better, Yosi. Thank you.
clear? Beautiful. Wait, what the heck is this? Wait. That's a little bit too big for me. Yeah, I don't know why. Why is why not?
A little
Hold
bit
on
too
one
small for
second.
me.
Okay, because every turn. Okay, let me see. How's that?
That's perfect, Yosi.
That's
Yosi,
good?
that's excellent. Perfect.
Excellent. So right before, since it's been a couple of weeks since we did chapter 7, let me just recap again. Do you remember this is where Gideon is leading? He's charged from God to lead the Israelites against the Midianites, and of course the Midianites have 2 cohorts as well. And he gets a vision, and he finally attacks. And he creates, if you remember, those 3 lines, and the lines come down and they separate, and then they blow in the shofar, and they scare the bejeebers out of the Midianites, and they attack them. They beat them, and he's able to capture a couple of generals, except 2 are right now are going to be under pursuit. And if you look at, let me quickly, number 7. All right, Vayilkedu shnei sar Midian et Orev et Ze'ev. Right. They captured 2 generals. One was the name Orev, which, as we discussed, is the name crow, or a crow. Ve'et Ze'ev, and a wolf. That's the name of the guys. Vayargu et Orev betzur Orev. They killed. They ended up. Let me just get these 2 as well in, and they end up, of course. Unfortunately, how do you call it? They end up killing these 2 generals, and they continue to pursue Midian, and they bring. Hold on, and they bring the 2 heads of these generals, Orev and Ze'ev, to Gideon, and Gideon right now is across the Jordan, on the other side of the Jordan. They are right now continuing the chase, and that is where we are at. Does anybody have any questions in terms of remembering where we're at? Is everybody okay? Yeah? Okay, so the chapter 8, it's a very, very long chapter. Very colorful chapter. Vayomru elav ish Ephraim, and the men from the tribe of Ephraim actually came up with a complaint to Gideon. Ma davar hazeh asita lanu? What have you done to us? In other words, you have almost embarrassed us. Why have you shamed us? Levilti kerot lanu. Why did you not call us? Ki halachte lachem b'Midian. For you knew you were going to go fight against Midian, but you didn't call upon us to join in with you. So after the fact, kind of, now Ephraim is having a complaint to Gideon. Why didn't you, from the foresight, from the beginning, from beforehand, called us to fight for Gideon? Vayarivuni to bechoska. and they were actually rebuking him quite strongly and quite profusely. So they were really pestering him in terms of they wanted to know why he did not include them on the onset. Finally, he answers them. Vayomer alehem. So he answers them. Me asiti atakachem. If you look at the entire war, really, what have I done more than that which you have done? Halot tov alalot Ephraim mivtzir Aviezer. For Ephraim's gleanings are much better than that of Aviezer's wine, Aviezer's wine, his vintages. Why? Why is yours much better than mine? For did God not give those two generals of Orev and Ze'ev in your hands? He gave them to you. You have all the glory. How? What have I done? What would I have been able to do? How can I be compared to what you have done? Then suddenly, after he spoke to them this way, they finally calmed down and their anger subsided. Once he spoke in this fashion. So in other words, he kind of gave them a little bit of yashikoach. He gave them a little bit of yuhu, you did great, and they finally calmed down. Vayevo Gidon hayardena. Gidon came to the Jordan. Overhu, he crossed it. Ushlosh meot haisha sherito ayefim verodfim. And he has 300 fighting men with him. And by now they also are quite tired and they're quite famished, but still in pursuit. They're following him in pursuit of who? They're still going to be in pursuit. You're going to see who. They still have 2 more leaders of Midian that they're trying to chase down. And they come up to a city named Sukkot. Where do we have this city of Sukkot? Where is it from? Where do we have where do we have this city? Right?
Do you mean Nineveh?
Pardon?
Are you trying to make a in terms of Nineveh?
Nineveh? No, Nineveh was something else. But where do we have this city of Sukkot? Does anybody remember where the city of Sukkot come in?
No.
So first of all, Sukkot is an ancient city which Jacob establishes as when he builds Sukkot for his animals. If you remember, in the Torah, you'll see Vayavo Yaakov Sukkota after he flees and he has a confrontation with his father-in-law Lavan, who's chasing him down after he leaves. Finally, he settles down in a place called Sukkot, and it's named for Sukkot. Why? Because he built sheds not for himself but for the animals, which was a chidush, which was something unheard of in terms of for the comfort of the sheep and the livestock. So he builds this place Sukkot, and Chazal there say, by the way, the reason why it's also built Sukkot, it's a foreshadowing of that which, of course, the Israelites will do later on in the desert, in the wilderness. Where do they get their trees from? Right? Where do they get? You have to have some kind of things to build a sukkah. If you're in the wilderness, by definition, how do you build your sukkah? Certainly, they do not have the number for 1-800 sukkah.com or something where you can order your sukkah and have him put it up for you. And so Chazal said that Yaakov actually planted all these trees so that later on his generation, by the time the generation would need, they would have a forest, etc., to have wood for. Regardless, this is on the other side. This is right now where they are. They're in this place called Sukkot. So Gidon speaks to the place, to the residents of Sukkot, and he asks them, Tnu lanu kikrot lechem, please give us loaves of bread, la'am asher baragli, to the men that are with me, that are following me, to basically to my army. Ki ayfimhem, for they are tired and famished. Vanochi rodef acharei zevach v'tzalmuna malchei Midian, for we are all chasing after the kings of Midian, of Zevach and Tzalmuna. Okay, so he's asking, come upon a little city, and he tells them, please, do you have food for my men? Vayomer Sarei Sukkot, and the officials reply as one, right? Sarei is plural. It should have been Vayomru Sarei Sukkot, Vayomer Sarei Sukkot. They said in one voice. In other words, they were all staunched in this opinion. They said, Hachaf zevach v'tzalmuna ata be'adecha. Is zevach and tzalmuna already in your hand? Ki niten litzvaecha lachem, for we shall give your army food. In other words, have you done already what you need to do, or are you still on the chase? And basically, they do not want to give them food. Vayomer Gidon gets angry, and he tells them, Lachen, therefore, betet Hashem et zevach ve'tzalmuna be'adi, when God will give and deliver zevach and tzalmuna in my hands, vedashti et besarchem et kotzei hamidbar vet habarkanim, I will thrash your bodies upon desert thorns and on briars. In other words, I will punish you, he says, for not giving, not helping us out. By the way, if you notice, this is very similar again to when the Israelites kind of go through the desert. Of course, they're not in the chase, but they're hungry, they're famished, they're thirsty, and they ask their neighbors that they're crossing through for water, and they're declined. And anyone who declines to help out at the end becomes, so to speak, a castaway. Okay, and here this is very similar. So we're in the first city, the city of Sukkot. Vayal misham Penuel. Who knows what Penuel is? Where did that come from? Another city. Also with Yaakov, Penuel was the first, was where Jacob fights with the angel. Do you remember that? And he grabs him on the thigh, and from there on, we no longer eat from sciatica nerve, etc. This is Penuel again. So there's a lot of play here back to almost the area where Yaakov was settling. Okay.
Yosi, don't we also call that spot Beit El?
Yes, but it was called Penuel as well. That was the original.
Where is this? Is this across?
This is Penuel is your the name of Bethel was also called Luz. Penuel is somewhere near there. And this is Transjordan, on the other side of the Jordan. Okay, so he goes up to Penuel. Vaidaber alehem kazot, and again he speaks to the leaders of Penuel, and he asks them the same thing: can you please feed my men and I, who are tired and famished, accordingly? Vayanu to anshe Penuel kasher anu anshe Sukkot. However, the men or the leaders of Penuel answer in the same fashion and deny him food and deny him drink, just as the leaders of Sukkot. Vayomer gam lanshe Penuel lemor, and so he also speaks or threatens the people of Penuel as follows: Beshuvi v'shalom, when I return back safe and in peace, etotz et hamigdal hazeh, I will tear down this tower. So there was a tower in the middle of the city to show how great the city was, kind of like, I guess, very similar to what we have now. Our towers are downtown. The bigger the building is, the more prominent it is. They had this nice big tower, and he tells them, when I come back safely from my mission completed, I'm going to tear your tower down. V'zevach v'tzalmuna bekarkor. Now Zevach and Tzalmuna ended up resting in this place called Karkor. Umachanehem imam, and their army and their men are with them. Kechameshet asar elef, around 15,000 men. And it sounds like a huge number, but these are kol hanotarim mikol machane vnei kedem v'hanoflim me'av esrim elef ish sholef charev. These were all that remained of the entire host of the Kedemites, for the slain numbered 120,000 fighting men. So if you remember, there were about 135,000 minus 120. That's all that remained of the huge army, was 15,000 men. That's it. Vayal Gidon derech hashchune va'ohalim. Gidon marched up the road of the tent dwellers. In other words, not where the big city is, where the roim, the field dwellers were. Okay, mikedem lenovach v'yogbaha, to the east of Noba and to Yogbeha, and Vayach et hamachane v'hamachane haya vetach. And he routed out the camp. He stormed onto the camp. He raised it, and for the camp was off guard. They were not ready for an attack. So what happened? He surprised them. Vayanusu Zevach v'Tzalmunah, and Zevach and Tzalmunah started to flee again. Vayirdof acharehem, and of course he chases them, and finally Vayilkod et shnei malchei Midyan, et Zevach ve'et Tzalmunah, v'chol hamachane hecharid, and he captures finally the two kings of Midian, at Zevach and Tzalmunah, and he basically wipes out the entire camp of the army. Whether it's he killed them off or basically disbanded them, they no longer existed. They were no longer a threat. Vayashov Gidon ben Yoash min hamilchama mimale hechares, and now Gidon, the son of Yoash, is returning back from the war, and he's now back from the battle at the ascent of Cheres. This is the location roughly where it is. Okay, what happens now? They're on their way back. What two cities are they going to be going to?
Penuel and Sukkot.
You got it. Let's see what happens here. Vayil kod na'ar me'anshei Sukkot vaish alehu. And as they're going towards Sukkot, they capture a young lad and they start interrogating him. And what are they interrogating him about? They got the following information. They got the names of the leaders of Sukkot, Shiv'im v'shiva ish. In total, it was 77 people, or 77 men, who are the leaders or the chieftains of Sukkot. Vayavo el anshe Sukkot, and he comes up to the people, the leaders of Sukkot, and he pronounces, Hina zevach v'tzalmunah, look before you. Here are the two kings of Midian, of Zevach and Tzalmunah, asher chiraftem oti le'emor, that which you mocked, which you scoffed at me, saying, Hachaf Zevach v'Tzalmunah ta be'adecha? Are Zevach and Tzalmunah already in your hand? Kiniten la'anashecha yafim lechem, for we have to give your tired men food. So you mocked me, and here are the men. Vaikach et ziknei ha'ir, and so he took the elders of the city, and he's going to be punished them. Ve'et kotzei hamidbar ve'et habarkanim, and he brings the desert thorns and the briars, vayoda bahem et anshe Sukkot, and he punished as he whipped the people of Sukkot with these thorns and with these types of sticks that are obviously are very edgy and not just round, have a lot of these nodules on them that when you hit them, they create, of course, a lot of pain. Not that, regular wooden stick would not create a lot of pain, but this was obviously even more painful.
Not
And
nice.
yes, Farla.
Not nice. Taking
Not
that-
nice, but he warned them. This is also, by the way, the punishment of it's consistent with, as I mentioned beforehand, with the punishments in terms of those who did not help out, in terms of especially with food and water, where it was. You'll see there were a lot of kind of like what we have right now, rules of war, rules of conduct, rules of initiation, of expectation, and this was one of the things as well in terms of food. And they did not participate. They mocked him. They didn't say we didn't have enough. They almost didn't believe that he was going to capture them. They did not want to participate in their salvation, and so he punishes them and he warned them.
Yosi,
Okay. Yes.
if he was going back,
Yeah.
won't he be going through first to Penuel and then to Sukkot?
Could be. It just shows perhaps he was going through the route in terms of exactly who he approached first and then who approached second. In other words, had he received food in Sukkot, he would not have gone to Penuel. So Penuel kind of are gonna, they sinned against him because of the non-participatory action of Sukkot. Do you understand? So first he went to the source of the problem, which was Sukkot, and now he's going to go back to Penuel. Now it's not necessarily even, it might be also that he went backwards. I didn't really do a search of the
route.
of the route of where they are, but regardless, whether it's going backwards or not, Sukkot are the ones that are actually cause Penuel to sin as well. Do you see it that way? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Had they received the food from Sukkot, there would be no need for them to ask Penuel for their food. So Penuel would not have sinned against them. Okay, so first it goes back to the source. Yes, Farla.
Taking the elders is really a drastic move.
The elders, what I mean by the elders is not all the oldest people. It's the leaders. That is what the elders are meant. In other words, the elders were the ones who answered, who mocked them and said, hey, you know, why do we have to give you? What have you done? Basically, they asked, what have you done? Show us what you're doing, you know, as opposed to understanding that they were going to help him, etc., and alleviate the hunger amongst the men. They didn't participate, and they mocked them as well. And so now, yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah,
So-
and so
Right.
How does this behavior compare to the Amalekites who didn't want to help the Jews as they were leaving Egypt?
exactly. So that's what I mentioned beforehand. It's very, very, you can almost compare the two, and we did from the other chapters of how Gidon behaves very much in a very similar manner to Moshe in his asking of God and his always doubting, and not so much doubting, but asking for another sign from God, and very similar to the way that Moshe kind of was interacting with God at the beginning. Show me another sign. How are they going to believe me? Show me another sign. And if you show me this, okay, give me proof again. And it's very, very similar. And here you see again that parallel of the Israelites in the desert with Moshe. And now you see this parallel as well here with the food. It's quite interesting. Of course, Amalek, we know what Amalek ends up doing. Of course, Amalek ends up not only not participating in food, but they end up attacking from the rear, attacking the women, attacking the vulnerable, the elderly, and the women, and the children. And for that, of course, was we just had a holiday of Purim in terms of, and Shabbat of Zachor, that we are not to forget that which Amalek did. And really, anybody who along the way did not help or did not champion, if I can say, the needs of the Israelites, even for pay. So it was not expected to be done for free. If you read the lingo of the Israelites going through, it's through payment. In other words, we will pay you for your water if we need your water. We'll pay you for what your wares, etc. And when they were not dealt with kindness, they were not dealt with kindness as well. So there's a mirroring of that, and we see a very similar here, a situation here as well. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yes, Esther.
Where were the Amalekites? Where would they be in the geography today?
What we'll do is afterwards, I'll go back, I'll show you the maps, and you'll be able to kind of see. Of course, Amalekites don't really exist today per se.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about where they were.
I will show you afterwards the map
Okay.
of where they are. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
So let's continue. So now he just went and whipped the elders of Sukkot. He punishes them, and he turns and goes to Penuel. Vet Migdal Penuel Natatz, and he tears down and ransacks the tower of Penuel. But not only that, Vayaharog et Anshe Ha'ir, and killed the townspeople. So this is a much more a violent and aggressive behavior. Anybody idea why?
Why?
why it's very, very different. The approach suddenly, the tone that he speaks to the people of Sukkot and to Pnuel are very, 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 very different.
Well, it's the second time, Yossi. He must have had a greater degree of frustration the second
Okay,
time.
that's a good answer. In other words, second time you get even okay, but why?
And
Why? Like I said beforehand, he goes to Sukkot because they're the ones who really were the perpetrators of not doing chesed with them, right? Not doing kindness. So he goes to the trouble of going there first. It seems like they did a worse thing. Why does he give? It seems more of a punishment he gives upon Penuel, who, as I mentioned beforehand, would not really been part of this had Sukkot just gave them food to begin with.
maybe because he thinks those two tribes or two communities would be examples for other people as having been strong. And if he wipes them out, it won't happen. So it's like a warning to the rest of the people.
Okay. Did somebody else want to answer something?
Yeah, Yossi.
Yes.
I think that the people in Penuel thought that they had power because they had a tower. And so he had to destroy them and the tower.
Great. So, by the way, where is there also a mention of a tower?
With Deborah, Mount
Abel.
Bavel, right? Bavel is also
Yeah,
a tower,
Bavel.
right? Right.
Bavel.
In other words, what are we going to do with Henry? You're onto some. So the Migdal, the tower of old, represented superiority, reaching up to the clouds, reaching up to the heavens, means that you had that godly type of ability. You were able to reach higher and higher. And not only that,
Yossi, is it supposed to be analogous to the Tower of Babel?
perhaps I think you can make your own assumptions. I think the difference with Penuel is Penuel kind of heard what was going on in Sukkot and even belittled the mission even more so, to show them, look what we have. We have this big tower. Who are you? Do you know what Sukkot told you? And you have the chutzpah to come back to us and to ask us when Sukkot didn't want to give you. You're asking us of these low. No, absolutely, we will not participate in it. And so what they actually did was belittled the whole ask, so to speak, even more so. Even though they were second, they kind of wanted to show the entire army, Gidon, how great they were, and their greatness represented absolutely zero. Their kindness, their connection to humanity, so to speak, was worth or their, after showing their lack of concern, their punishment was worth death, not just beating, but death. That, in other words, they belittled Gidon and his ask even more so. Okay, and then suddenly, let's continue. So those are the two different cities. Got it. Anybody has another question? So let's continue. Number 18. Suddenly, Gidon turns around to Zevach and Tzalmunna and asks them the following: Vayomer el Zevach veTzalmunna. He asks Zevach and Tzalmunna, Efo ha'anashim asher haragtem betavor? Those men, where are those men which you have killed in Tavor? Vayomru, and Zevach and Tzalmunna answer, Kamocha chemohem. They look just like you. They are just like you. Echad ketoar bnei hamelech. They replied, just like the sons of a king. What the heck is this? Anybody idea?
Yeah, well, there is a battle with Barak and Devorah
Okay.
on Mount Tabor against the.
Okay. Okay. But he's not talking to that. You're absolutely right. That was in Tavor. What is going on here? I'll read it again. This time I'll just read it in English. So then Gidon asks Zevach and Zalmunna, those men you killed at Tavor, what were they like? What were they to you? And they answer, Zevach and Salmuna, they look just like you. They were like the sons of a king. What the heck is going on here? And so I'll explain. And this is a lot of requiring a lot of commentary. And this is part as well of Nevi'im, that it's they give you just one basic line, but there's a lot of explanation that is needed. And so Tzalmunah and Zevach and Tzalmunah are of course kings, and one of those war rules was that when you capture a king, they are not put to death until they are tried for certain crimes or certain punishments worthy of their death. But they're not going to be killed right away. And you see it because what happens here with these two kings when Gidon captures them? He does not kill them. When they were chasing them on their way out on this long chase, they passed through the city of Tavor. And who is from Tavor? Gidon. And there they actually kill Gidon's brothers. And what is the reason to kill Gidon's brothers? The only reason when right away without a trial is when there's treason. Treason is death on the spot. And so what they're telling him is, there we saw your brethren, they look just like you. The kamocha kemohem, they deserve the same death that you deserve. This is what Zevach and Salmunah are telling Gidon. Just like you are technically, there's treason from us because we were ruling and you were treasonous. You deserve death. They deserve death as well, and so we killed them. Ketor bnei Melech, just as sons of a king. In other words, this is the rules of engagement of the kings. They will look just like you. They were your brethren. They were worthy of being killed. Now, some sages say that they actually thought that they were the sons of Gidon, not their brothers. And as you'll see shortly, you'll see the response under that. Vayomer, and he says, Achai bnei imihem, they were my brothers, the sons of my mother. Lu hecheitem otam, had you allowed them to live, lo harakti etchem, I would not kill you. I will not kill you. So now they have surpassed that law, right? In terms of they took law into their own hand. They right now technically killed somebody who was not to be killed, and this is going to be their punishment back as well again. So this is kind of the rules of engagement was part of that where kings or leaders were not necessarily killed, especially not when captured by the head. So what does Gidon do? Gidon orders, Vayomer liyeter bechoro. Gidon orders his eldest son, Yeter, Kum harogotam, go and kill them. Velo shalaf hanar charbo. However, Yeter simply is not able to even draw his sword. Ki areh, ki odenu nar, for he is timid, he was scared, for he was still a young lad. So this, by the way, is an incredible thing. This is, Gidon actually realizes from this that the next generation, his kins, his elder, would not be able to lead the Israelites in the future. Vayomer Zevach v'Tzalmunah, and Zevach and Tzalmunah turn around to Gidon and say, Kumatav banu, you come forward and you slay us. Ki cha'ish gevurato, because as part of the battle rules is we deserve death by a high ranking, the highest. We're the kings. We're not worthy to be killed by some lowlife. We need to be killed by a person who stands rank and file with us. Who is that? That is you. Vayakam Gidon. Gidon comes forward. Vayaharog et Zevach v'Tzalmunah, and he slays Zevach and Tzalmunah. Vaikach et asharonim asher betzavarei gemalehem, and he takes the crescents which are on the necks of their camels. Any idea what those crescents are? What would be ever see a camel?
Yeah.
In
Yes.
water,
So how would you describe their necks?
They're long.
Well,
They're very long, making them
Long.
vulnerable for what in war?
I guess attack. It could be
Attack. So what would you
attack.
do? What would you do to thwart that, to make it secure?
You
Guess
put
you would
on
put
some kind of a collar.
Yeah, exactly. So that was an armament. It was some kind of a beautiful armament to make their camels that much safer from either a spear or from an arrow to hit them in the neck. Okay, so he removes these shields which are in the necks of these camels. Vayimru ish Yisrael el Gidon. And the men of Israel had said to Gidon, Meshal banu gamata, gam bincha, gam ben bincha, ki oshatanu miad Midian. Please, Gidon, why don't you rule over us? And then your son, and then your grandson, because you have saved us from the Midianites. Vayomer alehem Gidon. Gidon responds, Lo emshol ani bachem. I do not want and I will not rule over you. Veloim shol b'ni bachem, and my son will not rule over you. Adonai yimshol bachem, God alone rules over you. However, he said,
Yossi, could I just
Yes,
ask? Wasn't
absolutely.
wasn't Yitro from Midian, and wasn't he helping Moshe? And like, I didn't realize the Midianites were so bad to the Israelites. If Yitro came from there.
So he was but one family from Midian, and we saw actually Midian was we saw a section of it with with Barak when he came to I forget the name right now of the name, but he was actually from Midian as well. So there were some families, some kinsmen in Midian that were, but by and large, this is a brand new generations afterwards that had not only no ties but had absolutely hatred and compulsion against the Israelites. So these were certainly not these were enemies of Israel. These were not how do you call it? Not kinsmen of the Israelites. But yes,
But
Yitro was part of it.
But in the time of Yitro, they were good to the Israelites.
Yes and no. And as you'll see shortly soon, there's going to be actually once again a little bit of a hint, foreshadowing to back to Yaakov, what the Midianites are like. So keep that in one moment. I don't want to ruin what's coming up, because the next pasuk you will see it, and I will speak with it. I will speak to you with you, and I'll make that connection.
Okay.
So Gidon says, no, I'm not going to rule over you. My children, my grandchildren, not rule over you. God is going to rule over you. However, Vayomer Alehem Gidon, Esh Allah mikem shela, I will ask one favor of you. Utnuli ish nezem shelalo. Let one of you give me one single earring which you received as part of your booty. In Izmei Zahav lahem, for they had a lot of earrings. Ki Ishmaelim hem, for they are just like Ishmaelites. Who are they talking about? Nizmei Zahav lahem, the last part of the pasuk, for they had golden earrings. Who's that talking about? So the Midianites used to wear that. That was part of their fashion. The men used to wear earrings, or a lot of gold, for they were Yishmaelim. They were just like Ishmael. Ishmael, of course, is not always seen in the brightest of light. And here you see that the Midianites are compared to the Ishmaelim. And this is once again a little bit of a somebody has a radio on or something.
Yeah, hello? So you're able to get it. Hello?
Hold on one second.
Oh,
Yeah. So here we see a comparison of of the Midianites to the Ishmaelim, where are they both mentioned
so-
in a single breath?
Midianites and Ishmaelim. Mhm.
Does it ring a
So
bell?
What was the flyer in your building say?
You have to mute her.
So where was this Ishmaelim?
We had
and-
Ishmael and the Midianites at the same time. I'm assuming somewhere in the desert involving Yitro.
No,
No,
But
right back.
isn't Joseph taken by the Ishmaelites?
Cindy, bing, 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 bing. You got it. So if you remember, it was Anashim Midianim. The Midianites came over and they pull him out of Joseph out of the hole, and Vaimkeruhu laishmaelim, and they sell him to the Ishmaelim.
But of
Some
course,
say,
so there wasn't any involvement with Yitro then. That's generations before Yitro.
exactly. So this is way before Yitro, where there's in the same pasuk that it says if you actually read the words and the chronology of the sale of Joseph, it doesn't say that his brothers sell him to anybody. It says that Midianites came by. There were Anashim Socharim Midianim. There were businessmen from Midian who had wares. They pull out Joseph out of the hole, and out of the wherever he was, put into the pit, and they actually sell him to Ishmaelim.
That was a
This
business
was-
deal.
Pardon?
They looked at it as another business deal.
Yes. but I'm
Selling
saying-
him.
So the whole idea of, and we know that the act of somebody who sells someone else, and in particular as a slave, in the olden days, a slave is somebody who loses his or her identity. In other words, you sold a soul. And if somebody steals somebody or kidnaps someone and sells them as a slave, the person who perpetrated that from the beginning, the one who originally stole that life, so to speak, is actually punished with death. That is how serious it is when you kidnap somebody and sell them to. It's one thing if you kidnap somebody, then you pay whatever. But if you kidnap somebody and you sell them, turn them into a slave and sell them to somebody as a slave, that is punishable by death. And so here we see the connection of Midian and Ishmaelim. And so back to the question of whether Midian was seen as a good or a friend or a foe. Certainly in this era, the Midianites were not friendly with the Israelites. They were seen in the worst light as possible. Okay, and there's also connection, by the way, if you look at the history of who Midian is and who Ishmael is. Look back a little bit the history. You'll see that they actually are related. So let's continue. Vayomru, the Israelites answer, Natona niten, we will gladly give you these earrings which we received as part of the booty. Vayfresuit hasimla, and so they spread out this cloth. Vayashlichu shama ish nezim shlalo, and each person walking by threw down, and they collected a huge amount of these earrings, and they threw them into this cloth to collect that which is being asked by Gideon. And so the weight, the weight of the golden earrings that he had requested, end up being around 1,700 shekels of gold, which was a particular weight. In those days, by the way, money was not a denomination like we have today. They wrote $5 or $1 on a piece of paper, and it was all tied into a particular weight, a weight especially of gold. It's even up until recent times, of course, the money was valued by the gold which you guaranteed with. That is why still gold is so important. The idea of the treasury having gold, etc., it's tied into the value of money. But in those days, it was the actual weight, and it was 1,700 shkalim of the shekels of gold. Levad min hasaronim v'antifot uvigdei hargaman. This was in addition to or aside from the crescents, that which the armaments, the antifot, these were also ornaments which literally hung below. So kind of like, in earrings, it wasn't just that which is attached to the ear, but anything, the ornaments that hung below, kind of like, you have a necklace and pendants on the necklace, whatever was hanging down from them. Uvigdei ha'argaman, and the purple robes, she'al malchei Midian, which were worn by the kings of Midian, which were obviously considered to be beautiful clothing, beautiful material. Ulvad min ha'anakot asher b'tzavarig malehem, and also in addition to the collars on the necks of their camels. So they had ornamental thing on the necks of the camels. They had what was functional as armaments, and then they had also beautification of that armament. So they had two different layers of neckwear that was on the camels. What does he do with this? Vayas oto Gidon le'ephod, and Gidon makes an ephod of this gold. Vayatzeg oto be'iro be'ofra, and he set it in his own town of Ofra. Why do you think he makes this? Why would he asks them for gold, and out of this he makes an ephod. If you want to look at it, it's some kind of monument, some kind of an ephod. Of course, it was a breastplate, but he creates this creation out of this gold and he sticks it in Ofra. Why?
He wants them to remember
Okay,
the
great,
fight.
exactly. So he makes this as a reminder for everybody to remember what happened. However, this backfires. Vayiznu chol Yisrael acharav sham. However, what ends up happening are the Israelites turn away and astray, and they actually became they start worshiping this ephod. And Vayhila Gidon ulvetole mokesh, and this was a thorn on the side of Gidon and to his family as well. In other words, Gidon wants to create this as a reminder of that which God had done them and saved them, and they turn around and end up worshiping this thing which Gidon has created.
Well, it's reminiscent of the calf.
Kind of, very similar. Again, very,
I
very.
realized the motivation wasn't the same, but it turned out to have the same impact.
Thank you. Very exact. There are a lot of similarities with the biblical story and
The Kamoha ego.
it's really quite amazing. Thank you, Michael, for picking up on that one. Okay, so he creates this. If you want to say, he creates this type of memorial thing, and that becomes almost like a new god or something to worship. Vaikana Midian lifnei bnei Israel, and thus the Midianites submitted to the Israelites. Velo yasfu laset rosham, and they did not raise its head again. Vatishkot haaretz arba'im shana bimei Gidon, and the land was quiet for 40 years during the days of Gidon. It's a little bit, by the way, you'll see, it's a little bit unclear, but it's whether Gidon actually remained a shofet or whether he didn't. It was just the idea of he was seen as a hero, and he dealt a blow to Midian, who were severely scared of the greatness of Gidon. And continues. Vayelech Yerubal ben Yoash vayeshev bevito. Yerubal was the name of who? The second name of
Gideon.
Gidon, exactly. Yerubal was his nickname because if you remember, he beat up, and that was one of the symbols. So Vayelech Yerubal ben Yoash, Gidon returns back to his house. Ul Gidon hayu shiv'im banim. Gidon had 70 sons. Yotzei recho, that which came out of his loins. Kinashim rabot hayulo, for he had many wives. A lot of the commentaries say this was one of his weaknesses, that he had
Yeah, it was a harem.
yeah, he had a lot of wives. And ufilak shosher bishchem, He had one concubine who lived in Shechem. Yaldalo gamhi ben. She also gave birth to a son. Vayasem et shmo Avimelech, and he called his son Avimelech, the son of what does Avimelech mean? The son of the king. A lot of people actually look down at Gidon at this point, where after this battle he goes back home and he has quite a few mistresses and wives, etc. And really he falls into a certain I don't want to say an addiction, but that is really what his second part of life was. He wanted to procreate, and he had many wives.
Was promiscuous.
Not so much promiscuous as he was allowed in those days to get married, but 70 was like a real
Over the top
number that really only reflected what? Who had such big numbers?
Shlomo, King Solomon.
In what position was he?
He was a king.
He was king. So some say that he really became haughty to the point where, or not necessarily, but in his mind, that he's, all the greatness that people ascribe to him. The Midianites were scared of him. The Israelites asked him to be their leader and his children, etc. So he kind of saw some kind of greatness, and he started behaving almost kind of like a king. And hence, what did he name his child?
Son of a king.
Avimelech, the son of the king. Some say no, it's the son of king in terms of God as the king, but it's a little bit here in terms of, if you look, by the way, let's go back up to the Pasuk, number 28. You see it? There's a little pay right there. Let me show you.
Yeah, I was saying.
Do you see the pay?
Mhm.
You
Yes.
see the pay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So this pay represents patuach. In other words, it's
open.
it's open until exactly. It's the end of it's in the scriptures. The rest of the sentence would be all open. Does everyone understand? That would be in other words, a hard enter. You start on the next line. So in other words, that's the end of the subject. Now we're starting the next, so to speak, idea. It happens to be in the same chapter, but it's literally the next. It would be the next chapter in itself. Like it's the next story. So he goes back home and he has 70 children from a lot of women. It's almost like the next chapter of his life. It's not connected to that with before, and his behavior certainly is to be scrutinized. It's not to be taken too lightly. And
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Pasuk 29, they call him Yerbaal.
Yeah.
And the next passage, they call him Gideon. Any
Yes.
reason why they changed the names?
Yes. So he was these were both interchangeable. If you look back in the Psukim, it says Vayal Yerubal hu Gidon. Yerubal is Gidon. It's the same thing. It was one of his nicknames that were given him actually as a reward for that which he has done. Yerubal is almost seen as it's a very strong nickname or second name which he received. And it's interesting, by the way, because usually when a second name is given, you never ever go back to your first name. So you have Avram was Abraham's first name. It changes to what?
Abraham.
Avram. And you don't see the Torah calling him Avram again. Sarai.
No, that's not true with Yaakov. It's still a back and forth even after the renaming.
Right, but by and large, it depends on what context. You're right, Michael. But most of the time, there's a name change, not so much as Kisarita you will be called, but what are we known as? We're known as Bnei Israel. Yeah, not Bnei Yaakov. But you're right. But here it's interchangeable, almost like back and forth. But it's the same guy. So he's going through a phase in his life. Maybe this is towards the end of his life. I from what I read, it's very similar in terms of he most likely was also treated with a lot of respect, given a lot of privileges. People came up to here to give him, etc. And he maybe got a little bit to his head, and so he's behaving pretty much like a king. and he has, like I said, he's all these wives, has a lot of offsprings. But finally, Vayamot Gidon ben Yoash b'Seiva Tova. Gideon, the son of Joash, dies at a ripe old age. Vaykaver bekever Yoash aviv. He actually gets buried in the tomb of his father Yoash, in Ophrah, in the city of Ophrah, Avi Haezri, of the Avezrites. In other words, that was the region known as, it was to the clan of the Israelites. However, Vahi ka'asher met Gidon, when Gideon dies, Vayashuvu b'nei Israel vayiznu acharei habe'alim. The Israelites once again revert back, and they start to worship the Baalim. Vaysimu lahem Baal Brit leElohim, and they adopted Baal Berit as their god.
So they're
Ve'lo
already
zacharu b'nei
heading on
Israel.
that direction to some extent with the ego, with the gold, there's a cup.
Yes, but now this is after Gidon. This is beyond that golden ephod which he creates, which kind of also, they worshipped, or they saw as some kind of a magical, a powerful object which he created, similar to that, to the golden calf. This is once Gidon dies, again they see like there's no figure, a connecting figure, and the Israelites once again fall by the wayside, and they start once again to fall back into that same rhythm as we mentioned, that circular of sinning, and they cry out, and they get punished, they cry out, God brings them a savior, but finally they have a savior, they have peace, Gidon passes away, and they fall back into that same rut. Ve'lo zachru b'nei Israel et Adonai Elohim. The Israelites no longer remembered their Lord, their God, who hamatzilotam mi'ad oivehem misaviv, who had rescued, who had saved them from their enemies that surround them. Ve'lo asu chesed im beit Yerubal Gidon, and they did not show loyalty, nor did they show favor with, or kindness towards, the house of Yerubal Gidon. Both names here, as you notice, Yerubal Gidon, Kechol HaTova Asher Asai Israel, for all the goodness and all the good which he brought on to the Israelites. And I want to share with you.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So what are the redeeming qualities of this book of Judges? Everybody seems to be battling. No one is following God. There's Gideon has revenge on the people. I don't know. It's not a good time.
It's so I think for me the book of Judges is really, forget about all the different stories, but look at the book of Judges as chapters in our lives, and how often do we have the same weaknesses? And it might not be in necessarily going and worshiping other gods, but how often do we forget in terms of we go on a I'll give the simplest example. We go on a diet because we know that our sugar consumption is too high, so we're very strong, and we have fortitude, and we're not going to eat sweets, and we're not going to eat like soda. We're not going to drink bad drinks, and then we do it for an X amount of time, and then we want to have once again, and we start putting on weight again, and we realize again after a while, when we don't feel so good and we feel heavy, and we put on a little bit of weight, and the clothing that we just bought don't fit anymore, and our back hurts a little bit, we realize that it's time for us to go on a diet again. And we once again go on a diet, and we go for a little bit, and we start feeling better, and this and that, and we feel so good, and once again we're tempted again, and we fall into that same trap. And I think it's just an overall picture kind of the individuals that we are, what we're made up. We're very easy to forget the past, fall into a certain comfort, or allow ourselves a little bit of a leeway when things get comfortable for us. But at the end we pay the price. And I think for me that is the overall message. Also for me, I think the idea of the Israelites still not being settled in the land fully. I think we see that as a theme where they still don't have that connection. Sages, by the way, say that in Ophrah, the ancient city of Ophrah, where Gidon lived, part of what he tried to create, some people say with that ephod, which represented what, the ephod? What was, where do we have the word ephod in where other place?
Echad,
The
one God.
The dress of the Kohen Gadol.
Exactly, Chaim. That is one of the vestments that the Kohen wore was an ephod. Some commentaries say that part of that feeling that he felt like he was God, not God, that he was the king, was creating that ephod, which was kind of calling himself the new Kohen Gadol. In other words, he was the one who spiritually is leading the people, and that's maybe kind of also lends to that feeling that he felt that he was kind of a king, or that he had some kind of superiority. Regardless of what it was, or even if he had actually pure thoughts of reminding the Israelites, showing them so that they don't fall back, what he tried to do was create in his city that that holiness, that which was going to be later on in Shiloh. So in other words, the people really missed some kind of structure. There was a structure not in place for them to be in check. In other words, when there was a leader that was able to prove to them their strength or their connection with God, they were fine. The moment that leader dies, suddenly they're right away off on the wrong path. And I think it just leads, this historically leads to the building of the Beit HaMikdash. Like slowly, if you look at it, Farla, that to me is what this is. But I wanted to share with you.
So what you're saying is that they need a connection. They need a.
They needed a heart. They need to be hardwired. They
Right.
needed, yeah. They not only, it was not only Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi was not good for them. They actually needed that plug in the wall. You know, like to connected. They couldn't quite be on their own without somebody there. Day to day. It's still like, yeah. Exactly. Right. Perhaps it was still that slave mentality where if they did not have a leader, if they didn't have a strong unifying force like Moshe, then later on to Yehoshua and etc., they could not stand on their own. It was a very interesting, and that still pretty much stands today if you want to look at it in terms of our unified body, in terms of Jews still today. So the stories still hold true and ring today, even though maybe what we are, what we worship maybe is different. It's not the Baal, it's not the Baal Peor, it's not Asherah, but it's something of that nature, something that is outside. So I wanted to share with you, this is in modern day Israel, this is Ophrah, which is named after the ancient town of Ophrah. And it's located about 5 or 6 miles west of the town of Taibeh, which is an Arab, a Christian Palestinian town, which is the modern day of Ophrah, where Ophrah would have been or near, which most scholars agree that's where it is. Regardless, the region is, if you know where Shechem is, it's a little bit northeast kind of Jerusalem. That's kind of where it is. In the west, in today what is known as would be the West Bank. But this town is what it looks like. So if you look at the beautiful trees, the mountainous, in terms of, this is where it would be. I thought that was kind of interesting. So if you know where Shechem is now, I have also was asked, let me see. Oh, I have to move this. Let me move this again. I want to show you. Let me do it the other way. Okay, let me look up to.
Hummer.
Not that one.
Who has a Hummer?
I saw that
Used
too.
to. He used to.
It's not in the Hebrew Bible.
Here we go.
We use camels with collars.
Yeah. Let me see. Oh, no, that's not the map. I'm sorry. I'm going to show you where is the, no. This one. Here we go. So, oh, I can't. So Edom is, you see, everybody sees on the south?
No,
No,
nothing.
Do you
We
see
can't
it?
see the map, Yossi. We just see your list.
Uh-huh. Let me stop share. Let me know. Does everybody see it now?
Yeah,
Yes.
now it's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
So do you see where it says Edom?
And,
Right at
On
the
the
bottom.
bottom.
Oh, Edomites, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
southeast corner, yeah.
So Esav hu Edom, Amalek is Edom. This is where they came from.
Hmm.
Okay, so now if you look at Shechem, do you see where Shechem is up here?
Um,
I'm going to show you right now here. I will.
Salt
Do
Sea.
you see Shechem?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, way
So,
up north.
Yeah.
so
Yes.
Shechem. So Ophrah is roughly somewhere here.
Salt Sea. No, that's not.
Okay,
That's the Dead Sea.
this is the Dead Sea.
So it's all in the south. All
Yes,
of these places.
Shechem is here. Do you see it?
Yeah.
It's somewhere here,
Hmm.
roughly. In this area here is where Ophrah is. Okay,
mm,
so that's the region where he ends up settling. That's his Shiloh right here ends up being before Jerusalem is established. Shiloh, which is right next, it's not far if you can look at it. Shiloh ends up being the religious center before it's
Right.
brought down to Jerusalem by David. David.
Are there people living in that area?
Sure, absolutely. And
Yeah.
if you not only that, if you look, if you follow it in terms of where they came, so they came from Egypt this way. They crossed at Jericho. This is really this most likely would be the most inhabited area to begin with. And then later on, they take little cities here and there, etc., and little pieces. But this would be the area where most of the Israelites would have lived to begin with.
Wow.
So
Why would they have chosen that area?
Pardon?
Why would they have chosen that area? It's not the most fertile area.
so part of it's not necessarily just the fertile area would be in the valley, okay, right there somewhere around. I'm just kind of showing it. There are also in between, like this way, there are also valleys that we read about that would also be, but right away this is Jericho, which was a really big and important country, almost a country in itself, kind of. It was a province, so to speak, a very, very important city. But all along here was where most of the big cities were. And as well, these are also quite big, etc. But and you notice the valley in between. But by and large, this would be the religious corridor, if you want to say it. This would be the religious corridor. You have Bethel, you have, by the way, Gilgal was also considered an important place. You have Shiloh, Shechem was a big place, and of course, then you end up in Yerushalayim, and you have Hebron here as well, which to us is like the third or so most religious place, importance, not second, depending on how you look at it.
It's interesting because, you'd think that they would go more towards the Mediterranean because of, access. And
So you
trade-
also,
trade.
right, so you also have to understand what is this region kind of, in terms of geographically, what is it?
Well, it's all near Jerusalem.
Mountainous.
What is
No,
Jerusalem?
not. Jerusalem
it?
is,
It's center
Country of the country.
in the middle.
Judean Hill Island.
It's mountainous.
yeah.
It's mountainous. Mountainous was always advantageous. So in other words,
Defensive purposes, yeah.
in other
Thanks.
words,
I mean-
when you were living down on below, you were, and even till today, by the way, the high points, that is part of the reason why the Golan, it was so strategic and so important, is because of its position looking down at. You're traveling down from Jerusalem, roughly around here, maybe even not even that far, you can see the entire Tel Aviv skyline. You can see the skyline of Tel Aviv very clearly.
Mm.
If you have a straight sight to it and it's not cloudy. So this would be also advantageous to live in, because you would live on a hill. If
Right.
you noticed again, the city which I showed you before, where was it? Here it is. Let me just get this.
So you're saying that they're,
Do you see that? Do you see the village?
yeah,
Which one? Where?
Do you, let me see if hold on one second. I'm going to show you one more time. Does everybody see that?
No, yeah.
Yes,
So you notice that the city again is on a hill.
Yes.
Both cities are on top of a hill. It's not a valley. Till today, that still holds true. That when
Yeah.
you hold the high ground,
Yeah.
like that's the security, that's the safe. So especially when the Israelites just came across from Egypt, they haven't yet established their land. Where are they going to feel more secure?
Oh, yeah, on the top.
On the top. So that is why that whole band, if you want to call that religious corridor, was all on top of the hills. And even Haifa, which was where it's on top of a hill. Carmel is on
Mount
top of
Carmel.
that.
Right.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that is the connection. So even till today, by the way, even strategically, when a new city is being built or a new development, it's usually going to be on the high ground, unless it's already in part of the city. So Tel Aviv doesn't have to have any more security. We're not talking about from threats, of course, from bombing, etc. But its existence is not threatened from anything. It's such a big city that it holds its own. But all these small little towns and settlements, they're always on top of a hill. Always
Yeah.
on top of a hill.
That's
Always,
true.
always, always, always. So that is why that corridor.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any questions, anybody? Let me.
So I